do we have to dig so deep to uncover ancient ruins? Well, the ones that are underground have usually been covered by volcanic mud flows, lahars, or some kind of a mud flow from a tsunami that has brought in debris, or various waves, various tsunamis that have covered sections of the earth, or even the whole earth. This is about 7 meters or 21 feet depth. We've had various recent eruptions, Mount Pinatubo volcano, and this Galunggung volcano, Indonesia, 1982. And you can only see the rooftops. If those weren't there, you would never know that anything was underneath the mud flow, the lahar flow, the volcanic debris. This is another example of some kind of a mud flow that happened. This is a picture of a building in St. Petersburg, Russia. St. Petersburg is a city facing north towards Scandinavia. What happened here? Something must have brought in. We know St. Petersburg is in a swampy area that it's built on. But what happened here? Perhaps the bay, the area where this area was located, flooded somehow. A tsunami, who knows? And here we have Jerusalem in Israel. This was built on layers, one city above the other. What happened? Well, every time something was being flooded, obviously when something is being flooded with anything between 10, 20 feet, it's not feasible to dig everything out. You just build on top of everything. Just scrape together whatever material you could find, or get new material and build on top. But we've also had to dig out the Sphinx. That's another enigma. The Sphinx was buried up to its head in sand. What caused all of these ruins to be buried in sand? Was it another lahar? We know we have a lot of volcanoes in Egypt. They've recently been discovered, and they've been thought to be the cause of the demise of the Pharaohic kingdoms. They never really survived after that. They had a lot of changes in their climate, changes in their geography, in their plant and animal sources, and also, of course, they had famine and social unrest. One of the reasons that Queen Cleopatra had to have an alliance with Rome is because of their terrible economic situation. And they thought that it was because of an asteroid strike that took place about 3000 BC, causing earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, and ash flows, and nuclear volcanic winters. So something happened, a series of things happened in the past that has buried all these very ancient constructions, from the Sphinx to the giant statues that we found recently in Easter Island. Only their heads were sticking out. Well, we recently found that they also have a body underneath, and it's about 7 meters down. So that's how we have to dig everything up. Something has happened. Buildings and monuments left exposed on the surface don't last long. Humans steal bits and pieces of things. They raid the tombs. They get whatever they can. Erosion wears everything off. So the only ancient ruins we find are the ones that are buried. But how did they get buried in the first place? Because the ground level of ancient cities tended to steadily rise. Settlements importing food, building materials for population, but getting rid of the waste and rubbish was a much lower priority. Also, houses were built on top of the ruins of older ones because hauling away rubble was too expensive. It was easier to just simply spread it out and build straight on top of that. Well, we're talking about, for example, rubble from mud flows, from landslides, from lahars, volcanic eruptions, volcanic mud flows. And if you see the video just before this one, we've even had one recently because of the eruption of Mount Rainier volcano. 500 years ago, there was a lahar mud flow, and they built a town right on top of that in Washington State. There was a huge upheaval of Mount Rainier about 5,600 years ago, causing a part of the volcano to collapse. The top part, 2,000 feet on top, caused a lahar that went all the way 30 miles out into the Puget Sound, Seattle, even up to the area of Vancouver Island in Canada, today Canada. That must have been a huge catastrophe. So that, you can imagine, must have cleaned out and changed the surface of the area. So whatever was there, obviously, would not have lasted. Now, rivers periodically flood. They also add layers of silt, while in dry regions, the wind constantly blows sand in the dust. And as we see, the Sphinx was buried up to its head. In the pictures that we have from the mid-19th century, 1850s, 1860s, the sand was still up to its neck until archaeologists started excavating it a little while later. So, when ancient towns are abandoned entirely, plant seeds quickly took root, creating a new forest, a new area that looks as if it's never been inhabited. And more bulk from the CO2 pulled in from the air. Their roots stabilize the soil, created from the rotting plant matter, and the layers gradually built up. So it looks as if nobody has ever lived there. And that we can see, for example, very nicely in the South American pyramids that were forested over. They look like mounds. They look like little hills, but they were pyramids underneath. So that's what happened. A lot of these areas are covered, and who knows how many more are covered that have not been discovered yet, especially in North America. The archaeology of North America has not really picked up at all. There's a lot to be found there. Especially, for example, the Native American Indian mounds, burial mounds. We've also had in the British Isles, the various cairns that they're now finding underneath those beautiful green mounds that look like little mounds. There's a lot of things to be found. Ancient construction. So it's either mud flows, landslides, floods. For example, we had a lot of floods lately, last year in the United States. You saw with your own eyes what happened. I mean, it was over the rooftops of one-family homes, totally devastated. And if you had mud coming in as well, how would you be able to remove that? You wouldn't. You just build on top of it, just like they did with the lahar flow of the volcano of Mount Rainier 500 years ago. They built the towns on top of the lahar flows. So we're going to get into this very interesting mud flow topic in the future. I hope you find it interesting because it has to do with earth changes, it has to do with volcanism, and it's part of life. It was part of life in the past, and it's been happening recently, especially with the volcanic lahars that we've seen. Another example is here, Göbekli Tepe of Turkey. This was about 9,000 BC. We have all these various columns that were buried by dirt and silt and gravel, and they thought they was intentionally buried, but it's not so. Something happened that buried these areas, just like the Sphinx was buried by all the sand. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.